You know, with this movie, I'm pretty surprised. The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey is, of course, the adaptation of the novel The Hobbit that is a prequel to the epic Lord of the Rings trilogy that was adapted into what is some called the greatest movies of all time, or at least the greatest trilogy of all time, directed by Peter Jackson. He's directing this movie now. And there has been a lot of controversy saying that how are you going to make one book into a trilogy, being that this is the shortest of all the books. And I was asking that too, because this is a 2.5 hour movie. Is it going to be any good? Well, let me just make it short. Yes, this movie is good. It is definitely worth watching, but it has its problems, as you would expect a movie that is split up into 3 parts. But we'll get to those in a minute. Let's focus on the really good that is The Hobbit. The first thing is the person who plays Bilbo Baggins. He is awesome playing Bilbo. He is innocent, but he can also be courageous. He's a little cowardice, but he's not afraid to go out and do what he is. He's basically what Frodo was, but done a little bit better if you ask me. He doesn't want to go on this adventure at first. He's very hesitant. He's comfortable with the life he has. Just chilling, reading his books, smoking a bit of weed on the side. That's his life. He's not used to this big adventure that is awaiting him. When all of a sudden, Gandalf the Grey shows up and says, "I have an adventure for you." Turning it down, he walks away. But Gandalf, unknowns to him, sends out 13 dwarves up to his house, who immediately bash in and start wrecking his house in a way and eating all of his food. Now, what's really interesting about this movie, comparing it to Lord of the Rings, is that the dwarves in this movie look a lot different than the dwarves in the Lord of the Rings movies, as in they look a lot different than each other. In Lord of the Rings, the dwarves look quite similar. They didn't have a lot of different facial features. Their hair kind of looked the same, but in this one, no. There's a lot of differences. Some have bigger noses, some are a lot fatter than others, some have different really crazy hairstyles, but they're all good. Some of these characters, though, you don't really get to know as much as the others, but I'm sure we'll spread these out in the sequels. But for now, there's some of these guys that I just can't remember or talk about. It's mostly spread between this one guy who has this big beard, no little mustache thing, and a giant nose, and our main dwarf, the prince, who really does need the help of this Bilbo Baggins, because the story pretty much goes that a long time ago, the dwarves' castle in the Lonely Mountain was taken over by a dragon who took their gold and cast them out of their own house by taking over. And then he's like, well, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to assemble an army to go in. So it's just him, 12 other guys, Gandalf, and Bilbo. They need Bilbo because apparently he can sneak in and find the entrance way without getting caught, because hobbits are hard to find. So there you go. Now the movie does take a little bit of time to get into. It takes about a half hour before we get to the really good stuff. I mean, half hour in, we're still in the Shire talking, the dwarves still doing their stuff, and we're stuck in this place, and we're just like, moving along, come on. But then the movie picks up and it gets really good. It has a lot of action, a lot of humor. There's a lot more humor in these movies than there was in the Lord of the Rings movies. And there's a lot more CGI, and you're going to notice that right off the bat. But it's well done in this time, so it's nothing that's going to bother your eyes. All the moments that you read in the books, if you did read the books, are in there. That moment where the trolls are going to try to eat them, it's in there. That moment where Gollum is in the caves and they're doing the riddles, that part was awesome. I really wish that it had continued a little bit longer than it did, because that was a pretty fun part of the movie, and Gollum looks awesome. He looks picture perfect from what I imagine Gollum should have looked like. And he's just as crazy, if not crazier, in this movie than he was in Lord of the Rings. Unfortunately, though, this is probably the only time we're going to see him in the movies. And there's some parts that they sacrifice in the movie for straight up humor where it's like, you probably shouldn't have done that. But it's nothing that's too big that gets in the way of the main movie. All that you should know is that The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey is a good time to watch. Go see it. Definitely check it out in theaters. And I've heard, and one thing I know is that the movie was shot in 48 frames per second. And I heard that that was bad and good at the same time. I didn't see it in the 48 frames. I saw it in the 24 frames. I did not see it in 3D. But I saw it in the regular 24 frames, and I gotta say, it was a pretty entertaining film. It opens you up to Middle-earth again, it gives more explanation to the lore of this story, and I hope with the other two movies it does the same thing. Though the ending for this movie is a little abrupt and quick, so you're just like, that's it. But know that there are 2 movies coming on the way, and they do just as good a job as this movie, maybe even better. This is going to be an epic trilogy of The Hobbit, and it'll be able to stand on its own against Lord of the Rings. But just know that this is a movie that you gotta see. Alright, thank you for watching my review of The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, and I'll see you guys on the next After This Show.